It should come as no surprise that I am a massive fan of the Souls games and I am a massive fan of Elden Ring. The game immediately won me over with its well design, great graphics, amazing boss fights and phenomenal gameplay and combat. And in my opinion, it thoroughly deserves Game of the Year. However, the person we're going to be reacting to today clearly doesn't think that, and that's absolutely fine, because at the end of the day, we're entitled to our own opinions. However, I'm going to be reacting to their takes and seeing if it's as bad as the Quantum TV review, or if it's actually got some valid points. With that being said though, guys, I won't take up any more of your time. This is Lewis or The Gaming Rift, and let's begin with the reaction.
Now, why am I talking about Elden Ring if that's what my channel's about? Well, Elden Ring in particular is coming from me, a nostalgic gamer who's actually coming in and playing. Of course I play modern games, but this one really bothered me, especially because it won so many Game of the Year awards. Elden Ring is considered by many one of the best games ever created, and one of the best games of 2022 without question. Except, I questioned it.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's one of the best games of all time, as at the end of the day, thousands of video games have been created, and there is no one video game that appeals to everyone's tastes. For my taste, however, I think Elden Ring well deserved the title of Game of the Year of 2022. The only game that really came close to rivaling it is God of War Ragnarok. However, I still don't think it was nearly as good as Elden Ring for how much it did for the franchise, for the new ideas and all that. So I'm very curious just to see what this guy's takes are on the matter, because it's clear that he doesn't think it deserves Game of the Year. However, I hope that he has some good reasoning behind that.
And Elden Ring, at the time, I never heard of it, and I didn't have a hype for it. But he was talking about it, and I started looking it up, and there was definitely hype there. And he was ready to purchase it on day one. And he hyped it up enough to where I was like, you know what, I think I want to pick up Elden Ring too. It looks kind of interesting, and George R.R. Martin has a lot to do with the story. This has got to be a good game, and I'm jumping in on a fresh story. And I love good stories in video games, so I'm all in. I get Elden Ring, he gets Elden Ring. I had my laptop, so I would be able to play it there overseas while he had his huge desktop setup.
After looking at the gameplay in his video and the fact that he mentioned he was playing the game on laptop, I can already see what he's going to be criticizing the game for, and that is the bad frame rates on launch. You see, for those of you who don't know, the game had very bad frame rates on the PC port of the game. PS5 and Xbox Series X, as far as I'm aware, ran like clockwork, as I myself played the game on the Series X and I prioritized frame rate over graphics, meaning that with the exception of the final boss, there was rarely ever any frame rate drops for me personally. This guy was playing Elden Ring on a laptop of all things, so yes, I'm imagining he's going to criticize the game on launch for its poor frame rate issues, which have long since been patched.
Elden Ring was developed by kind of like the same team that created Dark Souls, and it's kind of like in that intertwined. It's not in the same world, but it's kind of like the same like development methodology and how that gameplay is. It kind of tiered its way, from what I know, into Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring's story was partially crafted by George R.R. Martin. Now, he had a lot to do with like the basis of the world and the story, but it was really the director of the game that took it from a gameplay perspective and developed it for Elden Ring, the video game.
So far, this video is not as bad as the Quantum TV review, since he has it in his head that Elden Ring is supposed to be Dark Souls 4, when realistically that's not the case in the slightest. This guy, at the very least, did a bit of research into the background of the game, and he is fully aware that this is not Dark Souls 4. The game shares the same, gameplay principles as the Souls games, however, he is fully aware that it is not in the same universe. I mean, the storyline doesn't mention any Dark Souls references off the top of my head, so, good job for him for actually doing a bit of research into the background of the game.
So I booted up the game, and I created my character, and then I started the story, which seemed kind of empty. It had some synopsis to it, but then when I start playing, the world itself seemed very empty.
It shouldn't be much of a surprise that the story doesn't really hold your hand much in the intro of the game, because as, with the power of Souls games, the story in the grand narrative has already taken place. The entire point of the game is you are some insignificant fuck experiencing the aftermath as what's taken place in the game's story. Meaning that the battle between Melania and Radahn, for example, that already happened, centuries ago, and you are experiencing the aftermath in this ruined world, which is why there is an absence to the story.
And then there were these things on the floor that would kind of drop like either hints or they were just nonsensical statements that were made that you can find everywhere, because this game is online and a lot of people can leave their comments about the game like scattered all around there. But I didn't know that. It was day one. It was like launch day when it came out and it had all of those comments. But I'm like running around and I'm trying to like figure things out and get a hold on the many things going on in this world.
Honestly, congratulations, my guy. It's clear that you've put effort into your review if you were actually to focus on the game itself. You're clearly trying to get invested in the world, even though you're not fully familiar with the game's mechanics that it shares with previous Souls games. Honestly, good job to you, and I hope that, the rest of this review goes well. You're already better than the Quantum TV review.
Now, it kind of leads you in the way of where you need to go for most of the time, but as you're going, you're just trying to get a grasp on this beautiful looking world. Now, the graphics are pretty impressive, though I gotta be honest, graphics don't always do it for me. It's really interesting gameplay.
I mean, seriously, after watching this gameplay back, it is pretty obvious that playing the game on a PC or a laptop was a very bad idea. Seriously, modern day rigs struggle to run Elden Ring on launch. A fucking laptop is not going to have any chance whatsoever. However, I appreciate what he said about the graphics not being, massively important, and despite the fact that he praised the game's graphics. Something that a lot of reviewers don't quite understand is Elden Ring was in development for 4 years, i.e. before the PS5 and the Xbox Series X came out. Obviously the game is not going to have next-gen graphics. However, despite this, I appreciate that he actually gave the game's graphics the recognition and praise that they deserve.
Now, I know this game is particularly hard, and it's known to be hard, and part of the challenge and part of the quote-unquote fun is to get past those difficulties and learn how to get better and then level up and all of that stuff. But it was just weird. These encounters that I had were just weird. It's almost like there's no reason why someone would come and just start attacking me. It almost seemed like everyone I see is trying to kill me. That's so pointless, especially early on in the game, if I don't have some context around it. And the context around this game and why things are happening at first is very limited.
I mean, I don't want to, take the piss or anything, but in the one example you gave, you literally ran up to a camp that the enemy was resting at, and obviously they got aggroed and started attacking you. It should come as no surprise. I mean, if you invaded someone's personal space, obviously they're not going to take too kindly to you doing it, especially if they perceive you as a threat, which is something that they probably did. Also, complaining that there's no context in the game, the context is pretty simple. You go near a hostile enemy, they will start attacking you. Like, that's pretty much the only context you need. I mean, it's not something, specifically limited to Elden Ring. Quite a lot of video games do that.
I felt empty. I like the story. Playing, for example, God of War Ragnarok, or the other God of War that came out for PlayStation 4. The story builds you in, it builds the drama, it builds the emotion as you go and start doing your action set pieces. And you're not always, fighting and doing all of that. There's enough set pieces to where you actually are more involved and more engaged in the story and the gameplay, because the gameplay is amazing too. Not to say that Elden Ring gameplay isn't amazing, it's got its pros, but it's definitely got its cons.
I think it's pretty obvious which game he thinks should have deserved Game of the Year status. He's clearly a God of War fan, and that is totally fine. However, comparing a Souls game to a PlayStation exclusive is not a very good idea, because they are literally created differently. God of War Ragnarok, you experience the story as it goes on. You meet characters, and there's clearly an overarching plot behind the game. With Elden Ring, the main events in the plot have already taken place, and you are essentially exploring a world that has gone to shit. Comparing those two games is very, very wrong and redundant, since they were literally created differently.
And if you want to build in new players to actually enjoy this type of gameplay, it's got to be a little bit more approachable.
Oh, don't worry, Elden Ring is very accessible. You can get it on PC, laptop, Xbox, PlayStation, and pretty much every platform other than Nintendo Switch.
And I just was bored, unbelievably bored with the vast, quiet, nonsensical world that I was dealing with.
Not gonna lie, you do sound really bored, but I don't think it has anything to do with Elden Ring. I think you're just genuinely bored of making the video, poor guy. But in seriousness, I don't understand what he's talking about. The game really is not that boring, especially when you get into the later areas. Sure, there's not very much in Limgrave, but once you get to Liurnia, Caelid, hell, even, Altus Plateau or the Weeping Peninsula, the game does get more interesting. And the fact that he doesn't show any gameplay in this video, aside from, literally the first part of the first area, I'm not surprised he didn't find the game that interesting.
Now let's talk about the difficulty. Yes, I mentioned that I loved the story in, for example, God of War story and other action games like Spider-Man, Miles Morales that just came out to PC. The stories get you engaged, the gameplay is great, but it all has a nice flow to it. Even though, for example, Spider-Man, Miles Morales is an open world game and you can do so many different side quests, you're still led onto a path of knowing what your motivations are and going from there. Whereas Elden Ring, yeah, you have motivations, but everything is so boring. It's just a boring game. It's laid out very boring. I'm not even going to say hard was what actually turned me away from this.
I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but you keep dying to a very easy enemy. Seriously, those trolls are not that hard to fight. Sure, they hit reasonably hard for an early game enemy, but the amount of times you die to them is quite concerning. But again, you didn't show much gameplay aside from the first part of Limgrave, so I don't think you gave the game a fair enough chance, to be honest.
Speaking of difficulty, being a nostalgic gamer and a gamer that has been playing games since the mid-80s, there was a game for Sega Master System called R-Type. And R-Type was a game which is a shoot 'em up, and it wasn't much story into it. You pop the cartridge in the Sega Master System, and you literally are a spaceship, start shooting everything, and pretty much that's it. And it gave you 3 lives and 1 hit kill, so you had to do everything perfect. And let me tell you, so many bullets flew around, you were lucky just to get past a few levels. But the game in itself and the gameplay and everything involved was fun. I could see myself just playing it a little bit further, recognizing the patterns and then just going. But it wasn't impossible to enjoy the game.
Doesn't he kind of contradict himself here? Because he openly admits that the game he's referring to, which I've never heard of by the way, but he's openly stating that this game has no story and that its gameplay is so bare bones, yet he had fun with it, which isn't really an objective review. The main criticism he seems to have with Elden Ring is that it's boring and he didn't enjoy it, which is just subjective. Elden Ring objectively is a better game than whatever he is referring to. You want to know why? Because it has a phenomenal story and more complicated gameplay that is complex, fun, and enjoyable, making it objectively better.
It was so cool that I actually found that game to be one of my favorite games, despite the fact that it was unbelievably hard. Elden Ring, I couldn't get invested enough in that boring world or boring intro to even care about it.
He seems to be making the argument that he likes difficult games, so, the argument that he's bad at Elden Ring can't be used against him. But I mean, let's be honest, the amount of times that he dies against this troll maybe doesn't really hold up to his points. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are many games that are difficult out there that you can enjoy. And Elden Ring is difficult, and it requires a little bit more from you than something from a 1980s arcade would require.
Now, I spoke earlier about my friend who was super excited about it. He would spend night after night after night playing Elden Ring for hours, because he had a day job. So at night, he'd come in, lock himself in his computer room, and play for hours. Absolutely loved the game. Could I see what he liked? No, it just didn't appeal to me. Now, everyone's got a different opinion, but if there's someone out there that can see that the fact that this game, at least for someone who's new to this type of gameplay style, is unbelievably bored, it's horrible.
Well, if you think Elden Ring's gameplay is boring, then please do yourself a favor and never ever go back to play the other Souls games. Because aside from maybe Bloodborne and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, the Souls games, like Demon's Souls, through to Dark Souls 3 have clunky gameplay by comparison. So please do yourself a favor and never play those games.
Adulting has partially to do with this. I'm somebody who actually loves my Steam Deck, and I love my PlayStation Vita because it allows me to play a game, play for a few minutes, and then put it away. And yes, this game does work for Steam Deck, so maybe I'll try to give it more of a shot, but there's so much patience I have to have because being a busy guy, working on videos, then having a day job, which is completely different from YouTube, because I don't make money off of this channel. I do it for fun and for you guys. There's a limited amount of time that I have, and I do appreciate my sleep. I am not losing sleep over a game that I find absolutely boring, when I've got a backlog of games that are actually fun and engaging.
Once again, if you find Elden Ring boring, then that's absolutely fine. You're welcome to go play some games that you prefer more. I mean, there are games that I find more fun than Elden Ring. But saying that the entire game is objectively bad because you find it boring isn't an objective criticism.
The fact that Elden Ring got Game of the Year in the Game Awards, I understand because of all the work that went behind it, but there was a lot of media hype behind it, and I fell for it. Because after all that media hype, where all the channels talking about how wonderful this is, and when the Steam Deck came out, I was like, oh, it can play Elden Ring. How amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that you won't have a very good time playing Elden Ring on the Steam Deck if playing it on a laptop wasn't very enjoyable for you. Especially given the frame rate issues on PC at launch. Like, imagine on launch, someone trying to play Elden Ring on the Steam Deck. They must have had the most boring, miserable time possible playing a game.
No, I don't care. No, I've actually been putting up on this video gameplay of me like playing Elden Ring and being stuck in this one particular spot over and over again. That's not bad, but my problem with it was not the difficulty of like this spot. It's the fact that it makes no sense on why I'm getting attacked by this huge monster that comes out of nowhere, or the guys with arrows. It made no sense.
I mean, the fact that you die repeatedly to this troll and you also get hit multiple times by the archers would suggest that you're kind of bad at the game, although in fairness it is your first Souls game that you've properly delved into, so I can give you the benefit of the doubt. However, if you were to beat this section, you'd understand why they were attacking you. Do you know why? It's because you are on the way to Stormvale Castle and they are guarding the castle. I mean, do you want me to spell it for you?
It made no sense, and the fact that their accuracy with the arrows is unparalleled. Like, holy cow, they'll never miss. If you're coming, they'll never miss. You have to constantly dodge, and it's what? Like, there's hard, and then there's ridiculous.
You know what, I will give it to you. The hitbox from the troll in that one clip was pretty bullshit and you shouldn't have died. However, if you find that the accuracy or attacks of the archers is really annoying, then I'm actually quite happy that you didn't experience the rest of the game, because it would have been so painful for you. Like, literally, even if you had reached Margit, the difference in speed between Margit or, the Tree Sentinel or Godfrey or pretty much any of the main bosses, the speed would have just drove you up the wall. Like, imagine this guy fighting Malekith or Melania.
Point to it. It doesn't seem like there's any logical value on why they would have to make it that difficult.
Oh dear, you think that the archers and the troll are incredibly difficult. You know, this kind of contradicts your notion that it's not the difficulty that turns you off the game, when it quite clearly is. Oh Jesus, please never ever ever watch gameplay for Melania, Malekith, or you know, the Elden Beast or Radagon.
Now, and I've given this game plenty of chances. It's not just like I played it once and I was done with it.
Sorry buddy, but you have not given the game a fair chance. The gameplay that you show in this video is literally like the first half of the first area. You've not given the game a fair chance. Hell, you haven't even made it to Margit, which is like the first good boss. You haven't given the game a fair chance.
I would come back to it because you keep hearing all these channels and all these YouTubers like, this is the greatest game ever created, this is so awesome, and I'm like, I just don't see it.
I mean, the reason you don't see it is because you're stuck on a section that 99% of the fan base can literally run past without issue. You do realize that, you know, the site of grace you rested at, you get, you know, Torrent or the horse, and Torrent is so fast, even without the speed boost, that you can literally run past the giant before he even drops down. Don't believe me? Watch YouTube footage of it. If the game is giving you trouble in the open world, use the horse. You can sprint past pretty much any enemy encounter with Torrent, and the fact that you aren't doing it is stupid since you're clearly stuck at this part that is easily skippable.
I don't feel like this game earns my attention, and it doesn't.
Imagine me playing a Call of Duty campaign. I watch the intro cutscene, play like 50% of the first mission, never play the game again, and then give it a negative review. Like, that's basically what this guy's doing.
So, all in all, the marketing and friends hype, yeah, I fell for it. But, at the end of the day, this game is not for me. And it might not be for you either if you're anything like me.
At the very least, he does praise the game for the things it does right, and he openly admits that the game isn't for him. Unlike some people who accuse the fanbase of having no friends, no family, and no life, but you know, that's for another day. So all in all, I don't agree with the review in the slightest. I think that he should have played more than the opening part of the opening area before giving a review on the game, especially since the review came out 1 month ago at the time of making this video. So realistically, you've had almost a year at this point to make, you know, do research into the game and fully play it. So I think that the review could have been better. He does praise the game for what it objectively does right, and he openly admits that it isn't for him. So I can't really criticize his opinion, as we're all entitled to it. However, I think he should have brought up better evidence justifying his opinion, you know, because he clearly didn't play all of what the game had to offer. But anyways guys, that's all from me for today. This is Lewis or the Gaming Rift. If you enjoy more reviews or reactions like this, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. If you have any suggestions for videos either here or on the second channel, let me know as well, and consider checking out the second channel where we're doing Dark Souls and Elden Ring related content. Have a great day guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.